Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to council workshop today for October 24th. As we have quorum, just barely, but we have quorum. No one's allowed to leave. I will. If you need to, we'll take a break. The time is 11:01. I'll call the meeting to order. Always like to start the meeting off in a good way by acknowledging that the city of Maple Ridge carries out its business under traditional and unceded territory of the Katzie First Nation and the Kwantlen First Nation. Madam Speaker, what am I talking about?
Promotion.
There you go. Back to my House of Commons days. Madam Clerk, can you walk us through our agenda today?
Good morning. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available to the public for playback on our website in accordance with Council Policy 3.12. The primary purpose of a council workshop meeting is the receipt of information, review and discussion of policies and other matters of interest to council, and to make decisions.
To move this agenda, moved by Councillor Duick, seconded by Councillor Youssef. Any additions, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, which is the adoption of minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes from October 3rd, 2023, moved by Councillor Duick, seconded by Councillor Youssef. Any comments, questions on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda, please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The next item is item 5.1, City of Maple Ridge Heritage Plan 2024 to 2034, and staff are in attendance to present the application.
We have a presentation. Yay. We like presentations. You have the floor.
Good morning. Good morning. Does that work? I think that's just. How about now? Okay. It sounds a little different. So while my PowerPoint is coming up, I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Don Luxton from Don Luxton and Associates, who was hired to assist staff with this refresh of the Heritage Plan. So as mentioned in the report, this is a comprehensive update to the Heritage Plan that was endorsed back in 2013. And we're here today because part of that 2013 plan recommended reviewing after 7 years in 2020 to see if the plan still met the community's needs, understood the challenges of the current context. And so after that review, it was determined it would be a good time to do a refresh of the Heritage Plan. So that's why we're here today. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the plan and heritage, and then I'm going to pass it over to Don Luxton to walk you through the goals, the vision, and some of the action items that are included in the plan.
little bit of patience while we get through the technical issues. I can bring a hammer from home. I'll take our frustrations out with a hammer. Bang, bang, bang.
Awesome, thank you. So for the refreshed heritage plan, I wanted to start off with some current context of Maple Ridge's heritage. So right now, there are over 150 sites that are on the heritage inventory in Maple Ridge. It includes cemeteries, landscapes, and trees. Right now, it is very place-based, but heritage includes anything that is unique to or valued by the community that can be passed on from generation. So it can be the intangible, it can be the built, natural, cultural, social, spiritual. Heritage is anything we want to value and pass on to the community. So in terms of developing the plan, public engagement was key. It was a key part of it. And the public engagement process launched in fall 2021. The public engagement process included a virtual open house on October 6th, an online public survey that was open for over a month, meeting with stakeholders and meetings with the Community Heritage Commission. So in terms of a quick summary of engagement, 7 people attended the open house, and there's quite a good dialogue during that open house, and 51 people completed the survey. On the screen here are the top cultural heritage attributes that the community sees as most important. And built heritage and archival material are tied for number 1, but in close second, we have our archaeological sites, artifacts, significant events, and then coming up in the end is cultural landscapes, stories, and folklore. Not to say that there weren't others that were important, but these were deemed to be the top. In terms of a summary from the engagement of the process, 3 themes really emerged from the feedback, which included recognizing truths of the past in the diverse history of Maple Ridge, improving the management of heritage resources, and supporting the community that is doing the good work to conserve heritage resources. So that's a little bit of a summary of the engagement. In terms of the plan, I'm going to pass it over to Don Luxton now. Yep.
Thanks so much, Krista. It's a pleasure to be here today to address council about this plan that's been underway for a while. I just want to, before I summarize, I'd like to thank staff for their engagement throughout the project, helping us through this a time of COVID and difficulties, and it took us a little while longer than we thought. I'd also like to thank the Community Heritage Commission for their input, and also the community stakeholders who participated as well. All this input's been very helpful in addressing work that's previously been done in the Heritage Program that's been going on for a number of decades, of course, since the early 1980s. So there's a lot of planning work that this builds on. As you can see, we developed a vision for the refreshed plan that builds upon what we had summarized in previous plans. Just go to the next slide. And out of that, we developed 5 goals. They're very similar to goals previously developed in the heritage plans. But one major change is goal 1, to advance reconciliation. And this recognizes the ongoing and evolving relationship of the municipality with local First Nations, and is in line with the policies, the city's policies regarding reconciliation. The others are pretty straightforward, celebrating the city's diverse heritage and more as we move into the future and develop and sharpen our thinking about history that we, oops. Was that me?
Just give us a second. I think
Sure.
we lost it and it came back.
I'll just keep going. So this was a very important part of refreshing the plan, that we had to think about developments in civic policy that have occurred in the last 10 years, and the new ways in which we address many of the issues regarding our diverse population. So including not only First Nations, but other cultural groups as well. So those are, now I think we can go to there. As per the previous plan, we want to enhance heritage management as we move forward. We want to support community conservation and support heritage education and awareness. This resulted in 50 actions that were prioritized in a time frame that leads us through the next 10 years. Some of these actions are indeed ongoing and underway. And then we prioritized according to what we think is a reasonable way to look at implementation over time. As mentioned, reconciliation is, of course, a key part of city work these days. We were honored to consult with Kwantlen First Nation on their views about the Heritage Plan. And of course, their view of heritage tends to be much more based on intangible heritage and cultural heritage. So we've recognized that within the actions as well. We also look at the diverse heritage of the city in a much different way these days, and we recognize that there are populations that have been very significant in the development of the city. An example of that is an increased awareness of the importance of the Japanese Canadian community that mostly disappeared in 1942, but their heritage is very much alive here, as well as many examples of that. So these are things that we want to explore more as we move forward and identify things that may not physically exist, but really are part of the cultural heritage, and look at ways for the public to be involved in nominating heritage sites. We looked at a number of things. We, of course, have an evolving situation, and so as the development occurs and there's more development, so we're looking at pressure that's being brought to bear on existing heritage sites. So we're looking at ways to enhance management to allow the city to deal with ongoing and evolving situations regarding existing heritage sites. We also think it's very important to support those people in the community that are actually actively involved in heritage initiatives. And one of these recommendations is, of course, to continue to support the Maple Ridge Museum and Archives in the work that they do. And also in 2021, we discussed with council the possibility of a financial heritage grant program that we recommend for implementation as part of the ongoing work for the Heritage Plan. And goal 5 finally is to increase public support and interest in heritage conservation. There already is a lot of support, but to find ways to connect with community stakeholders and also help people who actively are involved in heritage conservation. And I will turn it back to Krista at that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it up with next steps. So there's a process slide here on the screen. So we started reviewing the heritage plan. We went out, listened to the community, assessed feedback, prepared the plan. We did a stakeholder check-in, and we're here today seeking council endorsement of the refreshed heritage plan. And should council endorse it for the next 10 years, we would be hoping to implement the 50 actions. And so the recommendation for endorsement is here on the screen, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to move this item, please? Moved by Councillor Tan, seconded by Councillor Youssef. I'll open it up for questions, please. Councillor Duick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine isn't a question, just as the liaison to the Heritage Commission. Just want to echo the comments of thanking the participants in the community, but also the Heritage Commission because they were very involved in it. So this is a work of, as you heard, a number of years. And I think it's a great body of work and really appreciate everyone's efforts to bring it so that we can hopefully all endorse it here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echoing Councillor Dewick's comments, looking forward to supporting this and implementing the plan. Thank you very much to all of those who participated in making it a wonderful plan and bringing it together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm just going to echo the same thing. We know that Maple Ridge has a very strong heritage background. There's lots of folks that care deeply about these issues, and it's about our own personal histories here, and it's part of our identity. So I think this is a great step in that direction that will continue to focus on those pieces of our past, our present, and our future. So looking forward to this. Thank you. So we have a recommendation in front of us to adopt the 2013 to update the 2013. Stop moving. Okay. The recommendations on the screen. I can't even see it on mine. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next item, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item is item 5.2, Northeast Albion Land Use and Servicing Review Scoping Report. Staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Good morning. So very briefly, we are here to discuss a scoping report for a portion of the Northeast Albion area. So this is an area plan it is a subsection of an area within the area plan for the Albion area that was adopted into the OCP at the end of September in 2022. However, we have been experiencing some fundamental shifts in both the global and local economies. And as such, we are here to propose a targeted land use and servicing review of the southern portion of this area. So very briefly, in terms of how we got here, the Albion Area Plan came into effect in the early 2000s. And at that point, it was identified that the Northeast Albion area would require a closer look when development interests were reaching this area. So the first application in what's considered the Northeast Albion area was received in 2018, and this was to rezone 4 properties. So through that development application, it really spurred a conversation with the council at the time about needing to do a closer look at what this part of the plan could look like. So the planning process for Northeast Albion was endorsed at the beginning of 2019, and the concept was endorsed by council by October of the same year. So the map on the screen really reflects what that concept was at that point in time. You see the darker brown is really your multifamily, your townhouse developments. There's still a mix of single family that was reflecting the type of development that we were seeing in Albion South and Albion North around that time, as well as a new school and co-located park. Some of the dashed lines reflect some of the more community amenities that we were hoping to see in the area, one of them being for wildlife, but as well as for the future residents of the area in terms of trail networks that would be connecting everyone through the community, as well as to and from some of the destinations that were identified within the plan, namely a commercial node at the top and then the commercial and school and park node to the south. The concept plan was moved into the OCP bylaw process. It moved through the adoption process, and as I mentioned earlier, was adopted at the end of September in 2022. And since then, we have been receiving growing interest in increasing the amount of multifamily forms of development within this plan area. So the next slide does show where there are development applications currently in stream within this area. So you can see the northern portion has had some development applications come through, as well as one to the south. The map does not show the number of inquiries or the pre-application meetings that we've been having. So staff can certainly say that we are receiving a number of inquiries throughout this area, and that's partially why we have identified that this is an apt time to rehab these conversations both with council today and potentially the community if should this process be endorsed. So in terms of what the proposed scope of work is, it would be a version of what, for those that were here in 2019, a version of the scope that went out then. So it would be looking at land use and servicing again, as well as that public consultation piece. But this time it would be very focused on the area largely bounded by the red on the screen before you. So this is reflecting what is tentatively called Northeast Albion South. So roughly 20 hectares or 50 acres out of the original plan area, which was approximately 70 hectares. So the identified area is largely contiguous. It is bounded by some environmental features. So it would really help focus the conversation in terms of what this servicing and land use review would look like. So at a very high level, we'd be looking at the city policies in place that may have changed since 2019. So particularly in terms of our transportation network, as well as our site servicing capacities, we'll be able to take a closer look at land use and housing forms, both in terms of what the market can bear, as well as residential preferences. This would likely coalesce into a technical design charrette by those with city expertise. And then we would prepare and refine a land use and servicing concept to be brought back to the community, as well as council. So that refined land use and servicing concept would go out to the community for public input. And in terms of timing, we would anticipate that we'd be able to have those conversations with the community early next year. So as you can see in terms of the timeline on the screen before you, we're looking for council comment and endorsement on the process today. We would then begin that technical review, consult with the community, and be back before council in the early spring of next year. And I believe with that, the recommendation is on the screen before you to endorse the proposed scope of work that I just briefly outlined. Happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Can I get a motion to move this item, please? Moved by Councillor Youssef, seconded by Councillor Duick. I will open it up for comments or questions. Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for bringing this forward. I do have a few questions as well as some comments around our policy on area plans. If we're meant to do only one area plan at a time, as I understand the Lougheed corridor study and town core area plan is still in process. We haven't seen that come back yet. So to see another area plan opening up is a question that I have about that. And in my humble opinion, having been here last term and having approved the area plan as is, I believe that it is a completed body of work, and it did, and the report actually mentions how it was meant to build this complete community that is viable for the different types of housing, which is characteristic of Maple Ridge, that we do have that mixture of housing, single family as well as multifamily. That's my comment. My next question through the chair to staff is the time that we're going to take to complete this review. The applications that are already in process, how are we ensuring that those applications aren't unnecessarily delayed beyond what should be? And then, of course, how are we ensuring that this stock of housing is brought onto the market at a reasonable time and without excessive costs? Because as we know, time literally in this case will increase the price at the end of the day for the end user. So I'm concerned about the delays. However, I'd like to hear from staff how we are mitigating those concerns. And of course, if we're able to continue to help the applicants that are in stream, both mentioned in a report and not, to ensure that that housing stock is brought onto the market as quickly as possible.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
excellent set of questions.
So I'll break it up a little bit. You are correct. We do have a policy in place that does recommend that we only tackle one area plan at a time. Lougheed is anticipated to come back before council for a stronger conversation in the coming months. So that work is underway and would not be impacted by anything endorsed for the Northeast Albion area. As the report does touch on, this wasn't necessarily anticipated as part of the work plan for 2023, but we do believe we have found some resourcing solutions in order to be able to meet council's priorities, as well as be able to bring this work back to council on the anticipated timelines. In terms of how the targeted area planning process would work relative to the development applications in stream, anything north of the red line would be outside of the scope, so not impacted. And then any application within the red line would be able to proceed as usual. It would not be impacting the application as covered by the application numbers on the screen. Should anyone wish to make a development application on the properties within the red area, I think it would partially depend on what they were bringing forward. With the new combined process, it is doing a lot of the work up front. So it has been intended that we would bring back the concept plan for council endorsement to align with how long your average complete application package will take, so that we does not present a hindrance to anyone interested in developing in this area, but it does give us a chance to get ahead of some of those servicing questions, so that when we are working through the development application, we have the information at our fingertips and can provide accurate and timely information to them at that point in time.
Thank you very much for those assurances. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions and comments.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dewick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. A couple of my questions have been answered, but one of my questions was what prompted this, and I believe you answered it when you said we've had a number of inquiries in this area. So I'm assuming that's both in-stream applications, but have others that don't have an application inquired as well?
That's correct. We most of the area within the red boundary over the last 2 years have come in one way or another asking questions. So this would be a way to comprehensively respond back to all of them.
Okay. And you just answered my question on the in-stream application. So that's good to know. I really appreciate staff's willingness to undertake a body of work this quickly, but at the same time, if we have interests that, to be able to work alongside of that, that's awesome. The other thing for me, I shouldn't assume you haven't, but let me ask this question. By increasing the density, that's going to mean we're going to have more CACs, DCCs, potentially density bonusing, which is going to overall help the area. So has staff kind of done a preliminary on that, or is that part of the area plan?
That would be part of the work. So logic suggests, yes, that there would be additional CACs that would help with the amenities in the area, but without having crunched those numbers, I don't want to speak ahead of the review.
Right. Okay. Because to me, that's one of the obvious ones when I look at this. And when I look at the fact that there's the proposed school, albeit we're not responsible for when that school gets built, but we can be advocates, and I know it's in the school district's facilities plan. So it's, the more we can have families around that school, and affordability is important, because a lot of families are finding themselves in multifamily units versus a single family. So speaking to the recommendation, I think it's critical that we support the staff's recommendations, because if I think of some of the language we use, if we need to lead by example. Area plans result in best practices. It means less OCP amendments. It means less application by application. So the more we can do to make everything be expedited is better. That's certainty for the business community as well. The livable piece is also critical. And in this particular area, it's already proposed to be dense, and we have lots of walkability. We have a proposed school site, parks. So it really, to me, makes perfect sense. And probably one of the most important things is the customer service piece. So again, I appreciate that staff have brought this to our attention in short order, appreciating that we have a number of other work items on your plates. It's one of those things that the market and the economic situation is presenting some challenges. And so everything that we can do to support our development community, I think is important, because we have a lofty goal of affordable housing. And that's a variety of affordable housing. So this is just one form of that in multifamily versus single family. So I think I support it wholeheartedly, and I'm happy to hear that staff are prepared to work alongside the applications in stream. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll just echo what some of my colleagues have been saying. Appreciate the work that's being done. For me, I want to make sure that when we're looking at this, that there's a focus as well on commercial infrastructure. If we're talking about affordability, if we're talking about a complete community, what's lacking in some of our areas east of us is that infrastructure that says I can walk to get my groceries, or I can bike to get my groceries. I don't have to hop in a car and clog up streets with traffic and what have you to get to grocery stores. So could you maybe expand on how this will help focus on that aspect of it?
Within the plan area is one of the existing commercial nodes. So under the original concept plan, it was a little bit vague in terms of what type that commercial unit would look like. Based on the commercial land use study received at the time that formed part of that plan. So it is anticipated that we'd be taking a second look at that, seeing how the densities and the populations have changed and what type of amendments to the commercial amenities may be able to be supported within this area, both in terms of within what would be Northeast Albion proper, but as well as the Albion South neighborhood that's just to the south of the border that would obviously be within the catchment areas as well. In terms of the area, I would just manage expectations in terms of the type of commercial infrastructure that we're going to be able to see here. It is only, I forget what I said, 20 hectares. So it will be, the type of commercial amenities will be reflective and tailored to the area and the population and the residents that live within the area. So that element has been envisioned in part of our land use review.
Thank you very much. And then the other question I'd like to try to shed some light on for me is we're talking about complete communities. So where do we stand with park space, green space, active transportation, bike lanes, that sort of stuff? Because you're creating a community that you're going to have families there, and you want to make sure that everybody can access the areas through different means.
Through the chair, well, to the chair. This concept plan does include either trails, bike lanes, or multi-use pathways on all north, south, and east-west roads within the concept. So some form of other modes of mobility have been accounted for. We will, of course, update it to reflect the most recent strategic transportation plan if there's any amendments or areas that we can strengthen through that document. And there's also, there is quite a bit of water in this area. You'll see on the map that there's quite a few creeks and tributaries from Kanaka. So we also incorporated a number of the trails to factor in the stormwater management component. So they are doing double duty for the community, both in terms of a climate and environmental perspective, but also being able to offer a wider range of ways to move throughout the neighborhood as well.
Okay, Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just further to the Mayor's points, I'm interested as well in sort of amenities around this area. And I think as Councillor Youssef has spoke to before about the availability of corner stores and sort of not to put words in Councillor Eustace's mouth, but just from my perspective, the ability of folks to walk towards to get the daily needs. I mean, realistically, this is folks will maybe need to travel if they're looking to buy a pair of shoes or something. But in terms of walking to store for a jug of milk, I really appreciate the conversations we've had about walkability to parks, sort of within that 5-minute walk. For example, if I understand from the strategic transportation plan that a lot of the trips are within that sort of not folks commuting to work. It's not that the point that I'm going for here, but sort of folks being able to walk for like a loaf of bread. So I'm really curious. I think there's an opportunity here for us to be both respectful to the development applications that already sort of are coming or in stream, and also just sort of be thoughtful about what kind of commercial we allow in this area. So just really, in short, putting a plug in for seeing more corner stores and being thoughtful about that in this area plan. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any final comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Motion has been carried. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, let's move on to the next item, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item is item 5.3, 2023-217-RZ, Public Hearing Waiver Procedures Bylaw number 7954-2023. Staff are in attendance to present the application to council for information.
You have the floor again.
Thank you. So the item before us today has a little bit of background that I'm going to go through quickly. It's probably very familiar to council because it's fresh. Back in February 2018 or February 28th, 2023, at a council workshop, there was a starting point for zone amended bylaws that may be eligible for waiving public hearing was presented. At the October 2nd Committee of the Whole, the bylaw was brought forward to council. It was forwarded to the October 10th regular council meeting. There was lots of discussion and it referred back to a workshop, which is why we're here today. So we're seeking council's feedback and direction. So to summarize what we heard on October 10th, let us know if we got it right, if we missed anything. We heard that there's an opportunity to accelerate development approvals for housing. We wanted to ensure residents have the opportunity to provide feedback. There is support for a wide range of housing forms, but recognize some forms may need a sensitive approach. And there is also interest in increasing the mail out radius from 50 meters to 100 meters for both the waived public hearing process as well as for regular public hearings. So in terms of a quick history on public hearings themselves, the legislation to require a public hearing has been in provincial legislation for over 100 years. In 2018, the province launched an engagement process to review development approval processes in order to build homes faster, which came from the result of Bill 26, which had several changes to the Local Government Act. And one of them to allow municipalities to pass a bylaw to remove the default requirement for public hearings for specific rezoning applications that comply with the official community plan. In terms of a current public hearing context, we took a snapshot of the last 2 years up until October, or the last public hearing just last week. So since January 2022, 76 applications went to public hearing. 32 of those applications would have met the criteria that was proposed in the bylaw. Of those 32 applications, 16 were subdivisions of 5 lots or less. And for those 32 applications, the number of letters, correspondence, and number of people spoke are here on the screen. So just a quick reminder on the current process before we get into alternatives. So a rezoning application is received. Once the application is deemed complete, an information sign is installed on the property. So notifying those around the neighborhood that there may be a change coming. The application moves through the process. It goes through our advisory design panel. No feedback is able to be, the public isn't able to provide feedback at that point, but they can learn about what might be coming to their neighborhood. After that, the developer or applicant has to host a development information meeting. So a a chance for the community to learn about the proposed application, what it might look like in their neighborhood. Once the application is ready for council consideration, it goes to committee of the whole and then moves through the zone amending bylaw process, which includes notification for public hearing and public hearing itself. Right now, council can waive public hearings for any zone amending bylaw that aligns with the official community plan by passing a motion. So this is just a transition slide. We've grayed out the notification of public hearing and public hearing itself, and we've inserted a notification of application between the development information meeting and committee of the whole. So the process that was proposed on October 10th is just that, going from a development information sign, keeping ADP, keeping our development information meeting, but inserting the notification of application, which includes newspaper ads and letters to residents within 50 meters, and then moving through committee of the whole and the bylaw amending process without public hearing. At October 10th, staff also proposed creating a new webpage to help residents find accurate and up-to-date information about in-stream development applications. So residents would be able to follow an application all the way through, kind of the process that you hear on the screen, and see, be able to click links to all associated reports. So based off what we heard from October 10th, there's a couple options to strengthen the proposed process. So keeping everything up to ADP and DIM, expanding the notification of applications from 50 meters to 100 meters. So keeping newspaper ads, but residents from in 100 meters would now get a notification, so it'd be in alignment with DIM, the DIM requirements. The other is to adjust some of the meeting agendas. So at committee of the whole, moving community forum from the bottom of the agenda to the top of the agenda, and similar to public question period for regular council meeting. So the members of the public would have a chance to address council at those meetings. So in terms of next steps, we're here to seek feedback and direction today. Should council direct, we can go and prepare amendments to the bylaw that was referred back and any other amendments to any other bylaws or policies in order to align with council's feedback today. So the main recommendation is here on the screen, that we go forward and make these amendments. And similar to the October 10th, we have an alternative recommendation, is that we go forward and make these amendments, but bring it back at a later date at the discretion of the CAO in order to allow applicants in the community to catch up with all the changes that we're proposing. But the main recommendation is to move forward with the amendments based off of council direction today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so can I get, now just for process wise, because we have an alternative, do we need to put a motion through for both of them or just put a motion through? Just one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Can I get a motion to move this forward, please? Moved by Councillor Youssef, seconded by Councillor Tan. All right, comments, questions? Councillor Duick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for these suggestions. I like what you've said about moving the question period to the beginning in the community forum, because that will help alleviate any concerns that I may have with any one application, because then people have an opportunity to speak to it before council makes the decision for first and second. Because that was one of the big concerns around the table when we were having the conversation, is how do we deal with that feedback when we're getting it after the fact? So that to me would be a perfect solution, is if we move that to the beginning of the agendas. That's perfect. Also updating the information on our website for people, making sure it's clear that they have an opportunity before it even comes to committee of the whole. And as per everything, we could implement this and then make sure that 1 year we review it, because then we'll get a really good understanding over the past year of the new bylaw where it was waived. Was there any concerns that stood out? And staff could update us as well. So I'm good moving forward with those recommendations that you made. And again, thank you. You guys are amazing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to start off by echoing Councillor Dewick's last comment that yes, truly staff have been amazing carrying on a significant amount of work and executing it with style as well. So I appreciate that immensely. Through the chair to staff, when we're talking about implementing and if we do pass the main motion, the recommendation on the screen, when can we start to implement? And then, of course, my next question is, does this only pertain to new applications that would be coming in, or would we be able to, for example, apply this new process to applications that have only been given first reading, for example, understanding that at second reading, now we're going into public hearing and that follows that process. So that's one question that I have. Also, through the chair, I'd like clarification from staff on how council can pull an application and then put it through a public hearing process. Will that be upon the request of a single councillor, or will it be put to a vote? And if it's put to a vote, are we talking about a simple majority or a 2/3 majority? Sorry, I'm just kind of rapid firing there. And lastly, Mr. Chair, again, I'd like clarification from staff on the most recent and best practices when it comes to the ADP, the role that it plays, and of course, the benefits of having it within our process. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my comments and questions for now.
Okay, through the chair. So in terms of implementation and when, so should staff direct for us to go back and make amendments? We make amendments, it'd come back, it would go through the 4 readings of a bylaw. So we wouldn't start to see implications until early 2024. In terms of new applications, it would be for applications that have not received first reading based off of the notification requirement that's being proposed. So even then you'd start to see implications further down the line because it would be very net new applications. In terms of how the council can require a public hearing at first and second reading, council can pass a motion through the majority to require a public hearing. So then that would trigger the public hearing process and procedures and policies that we have around that. So another mail out notification process and then a public hearing meeting. And then in terms of ADP, our advisory design panel, it's a panel of experts of architectural design and building background that provide critical comments on a proposed application to help the form and character of an application. So it has a good fit within the community. I think that was all the questions.
Thank you for those answers. Job well done. And again, really appreciate the work that's been done to date. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my comments and questions.
Thank you, Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, thank you to staff for the presentation. And just for clarity, to make sure I understand, the proposed changes are the 50-meter to 100-meter radius, moving the question periods for a committee of the whole to the front and public question period for a regular council to the front. And those are the 3 proposed changes. Did I understand that correctly?
Through the chair, yes, in order to strengthen the public engagement process. Yeah.
Wonderful. And just for that, I would like to echo Councillor Dewick's comments. I do think that provides ample opportunity for the public to really voice their concerns. And like to Councillor Youssef's point last time, I think it shows respect for our development partners as well, to make sure that they have some form of allows them to sort of waive the amount of time it takes them to get an application through. So because of that, I'm supportive, Mayor, of the recommendation is this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I'll jump in on mine. Echoing some of colleagues' comments, I like the expanding notification. I like the web page. When would the web page be available?
Through the chair, staff have already begun designing and figuring out what it might look like. And so it would be live when the process is adopted.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the one comment I keep hearing from the consistent comment I keep hearing is, I didn't know anything about this. Even though we send out letters, even though we're in the newspaper, there's a lot of folks who, for whatever reason, aren't getting it, aren't seeing it, or whatever. So I think the more that we can expand that information process, I think it will benefit all of us. And I don't know how to address this one, but I do have a concern, and it's a comment that Councillor Youssef had brought up about how do we take one out and say, you know, yes, we can go to council and we can vote on it, to give somebody who's not technically in that queue right now to be waived? How do we do that? And the concern I have with that is, are we now putting in a political process where it should be a process that's governed by the whatever the rules are? So are we in effect going to start to encourage people to lobby us to not do to waive that public hearing? So rather than following the rules, are we encouraging a different route through a political process?
So through the chair, if I understand the question correctly, looking for clarification on an application that has already received first reading or second reading, and how to waive public hearing when it's already in stream. Is that correct?
Yes.
So through the chair for the legislation, it's within council's purview to waive public hearing if it complies with the official community plan through passing a motion. So that would be up to council's discretion at first or second reading at that point. There would be, in terms of process, there's a notice that goes out in the paper saying that public hearing has been waived. So the legislation works out that requirement, and we would follow that process.
So just so my own trying to understand it. So if we continue to move forward, new in stream will follow the rules that are being set. The applications that are already currently in the system won't apply to them unless council decides and votes on which one to pull out. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. Applications that are already in stream would be set by the processes and legislation we already have in place. And should council adopt this bylaw, there'd be a new process where some applications would be exempt from public hearing by default.
So I guess where I'm like this right now is what is going to guide us with those in-stream applications, so that if somebody is coming along and saying, well, I don't want to go through a public hearing process, you know, and if I lobby enough counselors, maybe they'll waive it for me. I don't think that's the way that it should be. I mean, there still should be a set of criteria that say, if you meet these criteria, and so on and so forth. So I just find this could be, we still have quite a bit of in-stream applications. So I don't want to get to a point where I've got 500 people now showing up and saying, we want you to waive this for us. And then how are we deciding? How are we as a council going to say yes to this one, no to that one? So I'm just trying to seek clarification on what would help us make those decisions rather than just being a political decision. That makes sense?
Through the chair. So building on what Ms. Gowan was saying, the work before you this morning is really focused on what would be considered the new process. So putting that aside, what I'm hearing questions and kind of comments over is going to be, how can we equitably address the current process based on what we have in stream? So I think that's something that we can certainly build out in the council reports. We can certainly provide the recommendation at combined first and second at this point in time, offering council to waive the public hearing requirement should they desire. And that would be based on whether or not the application aligns with the legislative requirements for the application to be able to be waived, because that's the first threshold. In many cases, if there is a change to the OCP, it isn't possible to waive public hearing because it does, the rezoning application has to align with that OCP amendment. And then I think there's similar criteria outlined in the bylaw that we brought back on October 10th that we can certainly use as well to guide those recommendations for council in that in-between period while we still have some applications going through the older current process, if assuming we will have a new process and then eventually they will dovetail and the process will be the same throughout.
Thank you. I think if you can do that, I think that would be extremely helpful. So again, just trying to take the political process out of that and making sure that there is understanding from the development community, understanding from our residential community on what they can expect to see in that sense. So thank you for those answers. Appreciate it. Okay. Any other further comments or questions? What? Oh, is he up there? Does he have his hand up? Oh, okay. I see him right there. I thought you were saying he had his hand up. Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, I will, question or vote? Go ahead. Councillor Tan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And just to make sure from my understanding, it sounds like we have a thank you to staff for those clear updates on how we can further strengthen the public engagement around public hearings. And it sounds like we have some sort of agreement around the table that these changes are necessary for our public engagement, to strengthen the public engagement process. And it sounds like, just to make sure I understand, that the mayor has brought up some salient points about how to make sure that we take the politics out of sort of the waiving or not waiving of public hearings. And I think we have some sort of consensus around the table that this might be a good way to move forward. So just to say again, I'm supportive of today's recommendation. I think it sounds like there's some consensus around the table. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Final comments, questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of moving this forward, and it is unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you for your work and being able to capture mostly what we've talked about in the past and being able to bring it forward. So looking forward to the next step. Thank you. We have. Oh, yeah. You're next in line? Okay. Do we need to take a break? Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, where are we now?
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item is agenda item 5.4, seasonal curbside patio program and guidelines, and staff are in attendance to present.
Mayor and Council, thank you very much for having me here today. Certainly an interesting topic for many that are on 224th and elsewhere in our town center, and hopefully as we start to see across the municipality as well. So we have some proposed guidelines here for the seasonal curbside patio program. I should note right off the hop, and there is an item that I will cover again, that these do not cover, or this guideline does not cover those that are on private property. So those that would have their own patio on private lands, they would be able to continue with our building permit process and having those to continue. These are effectively within the road right of way or within the public road rights of way that the city owns, public lands. Did want to provide a little bit of context of really kind of how we got to this space here now. So the city of Maple Ridge did respond to COVID-19 with public health orders and really having our hospitality industry supported through distancing orders and those types of things, and being able to have these temporary curbside patios. Ultimately, we had 6 companies move forward with curbside patios in Maple Ridge. There were 12 that applied or inquired about the program, 6 that moved forward. There were 7 at one point. One of the companies closed down. And those are mainly centered around 224th Street for us. So quite an active area, someplace that we really want to see good activity as we go well into the future. And hopefully we have a very thoughtful and respectful program as we move forward. This program really was implemented in the past, the temporary curbside patio program in 2020, and it was in line with the temporary expanded service area, or TESA, authorizations from the BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, or LCRB. And that's has successfully been extended through the pandemic. So authorizations right now are continuing to the end of December in 2024. We'll talk about those in a second here because those are just our provincial authorizations for those that may be serving liquor onto their patios as well, and allows the ability to do so. And there was significant public engagement on patios completed, although still some discussion on overall support in the community with a number of folks expressing their support for curbside patios, but the sticking point really being parking either for or against having these public spaces being used for patios or otherwise. As we look at a modernized approach, really it's looking for how we can ensure we are being mindful of what the business owners needs, both retail as well as those that may be on the hospitality side. So being mindful of a program that's flexible for them, one that is low barrier to entry, one that is low cost as much as possible, still high value for the community and those companies as well. We ended up doing a review of multiple curbside patio programs, seasonal or otherwise, across the region, across the country. So a number within the Lower Mainland, on the island, other provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Nova Scotia, PEI, really define some of the best practices that we can implement here in Maple Ridge. Also review of any of our internal tools that we could use to authorize the use of public road right of way. So whether that be a license of occupation, a highway use permit, some of our other agreements and tools that we can utilize here, and just how easy those are to execute for businesses as well as ourselves. Also looking at our bylaws, our zoning, official community plan, and ensuring that there's alignment between those documents. I should note in the guidelines that there are some items I would look to adjust, and that's from an additional review of terms and conditions from LCRB for UVIN and UBREW groups. So I'll just peg that for 1 second, but we'll come back to it. And then we've had specific engagement with bylaws, licensing, community safety, engineering with our transportation branch, planning, fire, our leadership team, and then the LCRB as well, just to clarify some pieces as we move ahead. So information was also supplied to the Chamber and the Downtown Maple Ridge Business Improvement Association. We've had one-on-one interactions at points with retailers and or with the hospitality industry. That's on 2/24. I will note on that front, even from a discussion earlier on this morning with one of the hospitality industries, they felt like there should have been more conversation. I totally admit that, totally fair. Wanted to note to them once again that this is about a reasonable approach that we can have moving forward, and that these guidelines are still here in draft, which if endorsed, then we would still look to adjust those on an annual basis over the 2-year period, and then adjust those further in the future. So once again, taking a very flexible and a reasonable approach that we can have. And we really wanted to streamline our processes, making sure that multiple businesses throughout the community can really take part in future patio installations and having a vibrant community. So the proposed program would be available to businesses who have a valid City of Maple Ridge business license, are an eating or drinking establishment, and have a valid zoning approval as noted in the program guidelines. We'll go through a few of those here in a minute. And it applies really just to the curbside patios or those that are on the public right of way. So that could be a sidewalk, that could be parking lanes, those types of items. Those, once again, on privately held lands or on the parcel for the business itself would still continue with the building permit process. No issues, no changes with those whatsoever. They've already gone through their items. It's not on the public right of way or the public lands. We are proposing 4 types of curbside patios. So those are referenced within that guideline document. One is a sidewalk cafe, very similar to what you would see elsewhere, where you have tables and chairs right outside the front of the business. A sidewalk patio, so that would be without a boardwalk. Those, once again, that are right outside the business and may have either a railing or demarcation stanchions, those types of things, so that those are sectored off. And then that allows some of the eating and drinking establishments to have liquor on their patios. Full sidewalk patio, so that would be with effectively pedestrian diversion in the parking lane area, as well as the parklet patio. So there will be different seasonality that applies for each of those, the sidewalk cafe and sidewalk patio, since they are not as intensive on public lands. Those can run year round as long as they meet some of the specific items within the guideline. Those that are more intensive, so those that would be taking a parking space, a full sidewalk, any of those types of items are proposed to be seasonal. just so that we're once again making sure that we're being as fair as possible to both hospitality industry as well as retailers and or service companies that may need to have clients right outside their doors or utilizing the parking. We're also proposing that the season for patios would be April 1 and would end October 31. So we would need to have patios removed by November 1. Okay. Here's just some concepts to put into your head. Certainly want to make sure that it's clear in people's concept or in their minds of what we're talking about here. You can see the sidewalk cafe on your top left-hand side, sidewalk patio, those demarked areas, which could also be a stanchion or otherwise. That's on the top right. On the bottom left, you're seeing the full sidewalk with boardwalk. So that's a pedestrian diversion. And then on the bottom left, you're seeing the parklet patio. So those that would take the parking lane or portions of where you would have a full seating area there in other ones. We are also proposing that this is an opportunity for us to look at other areas. Currently, we have C2 and C3, community commercial and town center commercial, as areas that can partake in the patio program. These were the temporary areas. Other areas that we do have, other zones in Maple Ridge, allow for food and beverage and or drinking establishments. So we're proposing for those areas in Maple Ridge that could accommodate those. Why not start to look at the potential of curbside patios into those areas as well? So hopefully it allows for more areas that we can see some vibrancy and activity. I should also note that we'll get through a few items here, but we have noted within the guidelines document that those areas like Lougheed Highway, Dewdney, River Road, and especially areas that are over 50 kilometers an hour would not qualify for this because we want to make sure that people are safe, that we're not introducing uses that are going to be inconsistent with public safety and really just not a great product all said and done. When we start to look at the curbside patio plan, what would be needed from folks is really having a plan from them and an application and highway use permit itself. So in the patio plan, we would say that we would want to have the boundary of the proposed curbside patio, including dimensions, illustrating the proposed layout, indicating where there's a 2-meter pedestrian pathway that can be accommodated. And that's very much a standard across many regions to ensure that there's good public passageway. Identifying any of our boulevard street trees, any within the right of way utility infrastructure or fire infrastructure, which needs to be avoided as much as possible, and street furniture adjacent to the space. And then accessibility and elements as well. So ensuring that all types of people can utilize patios into the future. So I should note that there are within the guidelines document mentions of street and sidewalk safety, sightlines, maintaining access to utility infrastructure, maintaining access for fire department infrastructure, patron access and egress, use of heating and lighting on any one of the patios, insurance requirements, along with other noted pieces within, just to provide some clarity and to provide a wholesome view for those that want to come into this. Once again, I will note that the full sidewalk with boardwalk and the parklet curbside seasonal patios would be allowed on roadways with a posted speed limit of 50 kilometers or less. But once again, Lougheed Highway, Haney Bypass, and Dewdney Trunk Road become challenging for anyone. So we're just saying blanket would not be workable at this time. As we review the program, and if there's something in the future that can be considered, we'll certainly bring that forward. But at this point, we want to make sure they're very safe. Here's a broad overview of really each one. Once again, the curbside, sidewalk cafe, sidewalk patio, full sidewalk patio with boardwalk and the parklet patio. I will explicitly note that sidewalk cafe and sidewalk patio, we are noting can come around year round for folks since they are less intensive for space, less intensive for parking or otherwise. Businesses can have heated spaces and or those sitting areas throughout the year. And we certainly encourage them to do so. What we're proposing is that the sidewalk cafe effectively, as long as we're notified with, since they're bringing their tables and chairs in every evening, and they're not taking a whole bunch of space, as long as they can maintain that 2-meter pedestrian walkway area, those be approved effectively at application. make it easy on some of the company owners so that they can have interesting and really just quite frankly, neat sitting areas that engage with the public and create a vibrant community. Others, obviously, we would have applications come through on a seasonal basis and then make sure that we're utilizing the highway use permit here as well. And then here's just a simplified timeline for and steps for curbside patio program. Once again, year round for sidewalk cafe and sidewalk patio without the boardwalk. Applications opening for February 1, giving everyone enough time to make sure that they have questions and answers all the way through. Approvals by March 15th. Patio operational period from April 1 to October 31. Use of the highway use permit. And then do specifically want to note that we will require $5 million in liability insurance with the city of Maple Ridge named, just to make sure that we're keeping ourselves, the patrons and the company safe as we move ahead financially, okay? So if council is to endorse the program, we would look to notify companies as soon as possible. End of the timeframe for November 10. That's to ensure that we are meeting the needs of those as they're going into the holiday shopping season. And would look to have minor adjustments to the design of the guideline document and applications, posting that on the website in January at the very latest. And then promotion of the program in 2024 prior to applications opening as well. We would review on 2024 season on an annual basis and adjust the guideline documents for any learnings that we have for the 2025 year. I did very quickly want to mention within the guidelines document, excuse me. If you look on page 4 of that document, what we would be proposing is UBRU and UVIN licensed establishments, removing those specifically as named within the document, since that is contrary to their terms and conditions from 2021 from the LCRB, as noted. And we would look to add on page 6 under street safety and accessibility for parklet or full patios may include the need for traffic barriers for the just to ensure safety for those patios as they come in as well. And that's a standard across many of the patio programs in Canada, quite frankly. Okay. Available for any comments or questions. Certainly here to support in any way that I can.
You just stay right there.
I figured.
Thank you very much for the presentation. First, I need a motion to move this item, moved by Councillor Duick, seconded by Councillor Youssef. I'm going to reserve my specifics comments for later. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the work that's gone into this. This is not an easy place to be right now. These were temporary because of COVID, and they've been sitting there for quite some time. There's challenges on both sides. Lack of parking for some businesses can be really not helpful for them. I like that we are trying to put a program together that is dependable and reliable for people to understand, for businesses to understand. What we currently have right now is a hodgepodge of oversized patios. Some are in use, some are not in use. And I see the frustration where some are being used and they can be full quite a bit, and then some are not. So I like the idea of the seasonal aspect of that. The questions that I have in my mind are, and I said I'll let everybody talk first, but I just wanted to highlight that this is a very tough place to be in. And I know you guys are in that tough spot too, because what is the answer to this, right? These patios have been there for quite some time, which was a temporary use for them to be able to go there. And I don't know that they meet any criteria other than I'm building patio outdoors. Does it meet certain standards, for instance, right? Some of them are raised. Are they solid enough? Are they, because they're temporary. So are we going to ask owners to remove something that is very difficult to remove and not necessarily keep. Like if you could pick it up and put it in storage, that's one thing. But if you're going to have to demolish it, that could be quite a bit of cost as well. So these are all questions that I know that are through you've been seized with, as well as some of us have been seized with as well. So I'm going to stop right there. I just want to say thank you for wading into this. It's going to be an interesting conversation for sure.
It will be.
Thank you. So I will open it up the floor to comments or questions. Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Westover, for the work that you've been doing, and of course to the Downtown BIA and Chamber of Commerce for staying so involved and being at the leading edge of our business community and what's required. As a child who grew up around those world-renowned street cafes in Cairo, this really fits in with the advocacy that I've been doing for our downtown businesses to have more and more space available to them, as well as the possibility of closing down 224th to vehicle traffic on Saturdays to coincide with the farmers market. And then, of course, allow the downtown businesses to have that much more in the way of foot traffic, allow our community to be able to access the downtown without having to contend with motor vehicles. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a few questions about when we're looking at having the program run from April 1st to October 31st. Now, understanding that climate has been changing, seasons have been shifting, and we're seeing different seasons come at different times. I just heard on the radio the other day the comment about skipping fall altogether and going straight into winter. So with that, are we able to have a more flexible policy, if you will? That's one thing that I would be looking at. And then through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have Mr. Westover kind of enlighten us as to how this particular piece of work fits in with the off-street parking requirements that we're looking at reducing. And of course, I highly commend staff for having the flexibility in our approach. COVID did teach us to be open to doing things differently and to do so in a nimble and expeditious manner. And I'm seeing this piece of work as very much in that vein. And again, thank you for that work. It's been brilliant. I really like the expansion to other zones as well, to enable people to be to take advantage of the beautiful weather that we have and the outdoors that we have. And then, of course, building in the safety for 50 kilometers or over is thoroughly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions and comments for now.
Go ahead, Mr. Westover.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So first off, on the flexibility of the policy that's here. Certainly, I think as I've reviewed the other seasonal and or year-round policies, there have oftentimes in those areas that have year-round programs have been challenges on those areas that may not have a mix of different, or that may have a mix of different types of companies. Some of the challenges on utilizing the public road right of way. Once again, no different than what we have right now is the use of parking, folks, access egress for clients and customers for all types of businesses and industries. Wanted to take as flexible an approach than what we have right now. So trying to meet the needs of both those that are in the hospitality industry, as well as those that may have more seasonal campaigns like holiday shopping or otherwise, with having this be a timestamp so that there's some clarity. One other thing that is an opportunity or something that the business owners can go after is having, once again, those sidewalk cafes or the sidewalk patio that could allow them the best of all worlds, where they can either have those be seasonal or year round if they so choose, and they're not necessarily taking up a parking stall, and they still have the option or opportunity that they could go into a seasonal program or shift into a seasonal program where they could have a parklet or a full sidewalk patio and have that pedestrian diversion. So it's already been built in a way that's still flexible, yet is clear enough and consistent enough that they can start to plan for items as they move ahead into future years. And then also did want to note on the off-street parking. So I have had the discussions with planning department really about impacts to OCP, any of our area plans, with our zoning bylaws, with any of our plans and policies as we're moving ahead. At this point, for those areas where we have existing patios that are already on the private lands themselves, if it can be accommodated, then it certainly is accommodated. So that's not, once again, a part of this. program here and something that that we would still look at through the building permit process and trying to meet those needs of those business owners. So should not have an impact as long as there's space that's there and folks that agree to the idea of having a patio should not be an issue.
Thank you for that. And through the chair, I was actually thinking in my head anyway, that if we do reduce the parking requirements, that would allow for
Yeah,
more
for
space
this.
to be utilized. And I'm glad I'm not imagining this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the report. As the mayor said, this is one of those, you're going to make somebody happy and somebody's not going to be happy, but I do echo the comments that it was intended to be temporary. I was on the council of the day where that happened. And although it benefited many of the businesses, it also was not a benefit to some of the businesses. So it was one of these. So I really like your options as far as, utilizing the sidewalk to the best of our ability, still creating a safe passageway for pedestrians. Because for me, on the actual street, it is challenging, especially 224th, given the traffic. I mean, the traffic on 224th is a challenge at the best of times. The other side you can look at is it slows people down. But if it slowed people down, I'd be okay. But unfortunately, people tend to not slow down. So I think, and having it seasonal is because some of those businesses really, their patios are being utilized, but there's a couple that are not being utilized. So, and if I think of Big Feast, they have a sidewalk one that's functioning beautifully.
Mhm.
So I think there is the ability here to work with all the businesses to make sure that everybody gets the benefits that they need for their business. I think you've done a good job of outlining that. So I'm going to support the recommendations and recognizing that you still have some work to do, but you are very capable and the businesses, you engage with them. So I really appreciate your efforts on trying to make this work for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to staff through you for that presentation. I'd like to understand more about the consultation for this proposal. Were all the businesses on 224th, particularly ones that are affected by this, were they all informed and consulted?
So I'll, through you, Mr. Chair, over the course of the last year, we have attempted to have discussions with all of them. That is a learning from my end of things where we should have had multiple avenues of engagement out on a more regular basis. I heard that even just as this morning, that it felt like a bit of a surprise for what we provided here. So certainly have my apologies on that one. Do want to make sure that they are aware and engaged. I had a number of individual conversations and or meetings that were struck with those that are on especially the 224th area, really to note what our plan and what the recommendations I saw forward for council, what they would be. In some of the cases, I thought I was being very clear and saying would be proposing a seasonal patio program and having removal of those temporary patios that are here. And heard this morning that it just needed to do a better job on that piece. So that's why as a piece to the recommendations here is having that formal notification out for folks. And what my intent is here is to have hopefully a copy of the design guidelines moving ahead, and obviously supports out to those companies as well. We will walk them through the application. We will deal with any of the concerns that they have and really try to make sure that those are taken care of as we're moving ahead. Just want to improve.
Thank you. Thank you to you through the chair. Thank you for that sort of straightforwardness as well as we think about when you tell your directness, when you talked about communication with business owners. I too have had quite a bit. I've had some feedback about the suddenness of this. Just recognizing that this is a significant impact to a lot of people's business, and sort of removal by November 10th is about 2.5 weeks away. Significant part of people's businesses. And I think one thing that there's some things I appreciate about our 10th year. I understand that it was many cities are wrapping their heads around what it's like to move from a temporary program struck up in COVID-19 during the depths of the pandemic to, I think we really portrayed this sort of entrepreneurial spirit of trying to create a season patio program that sort of allowed people to make business, to have still a business during the pandemic. And I think now as we sort of move in, I think my understanding is that, a lot of cities are seeing quite a bit of success with their patio program. So in terms of large changes to our patio program, this is a very large change. And I just want to make sure that we step carefully and are respectful to businesses. I will say that I have received significant feedback that this was very quick. A Friday report in time for a Tuesday decision that will be a significant impact to people's businesses. And I'm going to underscore significant here. I'm happy to be a patron of some of those patios and sitting around and being able to order sushi from one place, bring it to one patio, another place, order pizza. And I just love how supportive the businesses are of each other, saying, yeah, come sit on my patio, get sushi or get taco from another patio, from another business, and come over here. And it just really warms my heart. There's such a tight-knit business community that are able to share their spaces. So I just want to tread very carefully around this. Yeah. And so I'm curious too, in terms of about the communication, whether we've looked at the cost, just to the mayor's point about the cost of putting up and then taking down those structures. And just to the mayor's point about accessibility as well. So the better built those patios are, the harder it is to take up and put down. The reason why I ask is my family ran a business, and I was corralled to do things like to take up temporary exhibits and pull them down again. And I can tell you that even for a temporary day patio like that, the exhibit, there was no small feat. So I'm wondering if we have looked at we have managed to done any work on the viability of taking them and putting down, and what the responses from those businesses are for the viability of that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a really, really great comment in terms of the viability, right direct from the businesses themselves. I have not had a chance to have that conversation in a number of areas and in Maple Ridge that do currently have curbside patios. They are governed by the highway use permit, which does note within as a term of each one of those that it is to be removable within 24 hours anyway. Does not mean to be destroyed or demolished, just means to be removed off those public lands. So if there's a storage space somewhere else, they are certainly welcome to keep and or fix up on an annual basis so that there is no new capital build every year. Our hope and our intent here would be to have high value patios that certainly are not going to break the bank, but are, look good, are unique, are really going to make sure that we have viability in our community and showing really good business vibrancy in our downtown, and then hopefully other areas as well. But further to your point, have not had that full and outright conversation with each one of the business owners here on what that actual cost is to them right now, and knowing too that these were in a lot of the cases that response for COVID. I don't really even know if it was to happen again here today, if they would be built in the same type of way, if I can put it that way.
I appreciate that. And I think through you, Mayor, to staff, and I really appreciate that directness as well about, thank you for just outlining that whether or not you've had that conversation with business owners. I think that, I think that's a really important point for us to uncover, whether it would be financially viable. I mean, taking down a structure within 24 hours, demolishing things is quite a bit easier than taking them down in an appropriate way, storing them, paying for the storage costs, and then putting them back up in here. As I think about sort of the comments I've received from people around the viability and the beauty of the vibrancy of the downtown space, the better built the patios are, the more likely they are to be used, and also reflect well on our downtown space. So, and the better built they are, the more costly they are. And I suspect the harder they are to take down and put up every year. So I think I'm going to express quite a bit of discomfort around moving forward with a policy that requires seasonal take up and put down without even having had that consultation of business yet. I think that would be premature. I think another question I would like to ask you, Mayor, is whether we've had that discussion or that in addition to talking to respected esteemed businesses, organizations in town, whether we've had a chance to consult with city planning, urban planning consultancies. I understand that lots of municipalities across North America have been looking at their patio programs, and I understand that there's quite a bit of interest in the economic vitality that downtown patios bring in terms of the vibrancy of the downtown. And then there have been quite a few studies, I understand then, about the use of public space, because really it is public space that the city owns, and there is the question, the largest question I think for us to understand is sort of like that economic benefits of being used as a patio and being used as a of a parking space. So I'm wondering if we've had any of that, a chance to have had any of those studies done?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of actual specific studies for us here in Maple Ridge, not necessarily specific to this topic here. There are design guidelines that we are looking at more broadly within the city of Maple Ridge in line with our OCP or other plans to make sure that they're in line and kind of future focused. I definitely take your lead, so to speak, on having vibrant places and having that economic viability here. The intent here with this program is so that we can actually start to have that on a consistent basis as we go ahead and hopefully have a bit of a stamp, so to speak, of here are the guidelines in place here that we can really start to understand more with and understand that there's improvements to be had in successive years. So I would anticipate, especially in the first year, if this was to go through, that it wouldn't be hard and fast for all of our rules here. We're learning all together and want to make sure that we're having a collaborative approach with our business owners and supporting them both on the hospitality side as well as those that are on the retailing side here, knowing that there are some clusters of these types of patios, curbside patios.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I don't know what my time is like. I forgot to hit my stopwatch here. So I can pause and then.
You got like 1 minute left.
I'll pause and let others take a chance. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, thank you. I guess it's back to me. Are you shaking your hand up there? Councillor Doze. Unmute yourself, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Sorry, I have to apologize because I've been going through serious technical challenges here, trying to get internet and all what have you, but I'm glad that I'm able to join this meeting at this point. I just wanted to say that I'm quite grateful to staff for this work that has been done. Being a member of the Economic Development Council or whatever you call it, I wanted to call our attention to the fact that street patio is not new. It might be new to Maple Ridge, but it is not new to so many cities, and it is the way to go. And I will give an example. Last summer, I was in the city of Oakville in Ontario, and anybody here can Google it and see what their downtown looked like. It was beautiful with all these street patios that they have there. So for this reason, I want to say that that is the way to go for our city, especially on the 224th. But I must also point out the fact that it is always very good to carry the people that you want to serve along. If for any reason that some of the participants and those who will be impacted by this process, if they are not consulted or carried along, I think we need to do that because it is very, very important. There's no doubt that there's going to be harsh business decisions here. It's going to cost money to dismantle and reassemble this on annual basis or seasonal basis as we try to do it. But looking at what has been done and the effort that has been put in this, I think that is the best option we have. So for this reason, I will be supporting this particular idea going forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, where to start? So the sidewalk cafe.
Yep.
Realistically, is there actually room on 224th to put in chairs and tables without interrupting the flow of pedestrian traffic?
To you, Mr. Chair, yes. It looks like it's a 3-meter sidewalk or roadway or a right of way that's there. So as long as it's a smaller table and chairs and it's right abutted right next to adjacent to the business front, should accommodate. There are specific areas where there may be a garbage can that comes in and may limit some flow, or there may be a tree or street furniture and that type of thing. And that's certainly a discussion that we can have to try to work with the business owners to try to find a way. We do note within the guidelines that we wouldn't be removing and or moving those items. We're not going to cut down a street tree or anything that way. And hopefully not on the street furniture side, but maybe there's a way that we can work with other business owners to have the patio a little bit further down, or if it's not going to be too intensive on space, be able to fit what they need in.
But to be fair, you wouldn't have the same amount of seating as you currently have, correct? Okay.
In the parklet patios, Mr. Chair, is that correct? Is that
So
what
if
you're
you were
referring
to
You wouldn't have the
just-
same amount of
just
seating as a parklet
Look at
patio?
224th.
Yep.
Silver Valley, Golds,
Yep.
Lotus and Lemongrass and Tees. If you remove the current patios there.
Yep.
How much room do you actually have to put in? So currently Silver Valley, always a lot of people there.
Yep.
You wouldn't be able to put in that many people with small tables there. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, or to you, Mr. Chair, correct. However, that being said, for us to transition from the temporary curbside patio program to the seasonal and or a patio program, those TESAs, the temporary expanded service areas, were not meant to increase occupancy. They were meant to increase distance. So conceivably, the companies, whether they had a patio or not, should be serving the same amount of people. That's what those were meant for, is the public distancing orders that were there from the province to ensure that they had enough space to distance appropriately to meet the needs of those in the hospitality industry to still serve the same amount of folks that they would have for their occupancy.
I mean, I do understand the need to go to a regulated, even seasonal approach to this. I am a little bit concerned about the November 10th deadline. Have you spoken to those that do have patios about this?
To you, Mr. Chair, I've had a conversation with one especially as of today and yesterday, where they did express quite a bit of concern in terms of the timeframe. They said that that's something that they could work with. That is not all of them that are on 224th at all. I've had repeated attempts for others, but whether it's actually physically walking down, phoning or otherwise, and have not received response back. But I would suggest that if we do adjust on those timeframes for the November 10th, that could impact some of the holiday retail shopping. It's a choice. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong by any stretch of the means, but I do want to be fair on that front. And if we are to delay, then that's certainly would not want to stick to the November 10 timeframe if we were to come back, because I do want to make sure that there's a reasonable amount of time there to make sure that business owners can organize the logistics for any removal if that's to move forward.
Do we have any stats on the winter season? How are these patios performing? Are they even being used in winter time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So just from observation over this last year, there are certainly those that have folks, I think, year round. I think we're pretty well aware of those. And then others that sit empty and primarily empty throughout any season. So
Yeah.
that's the challenging side to this one, is that we're caught in the scenario where we have some that have really taken off and pushed on their patios and have done a great job of really getting folks used to them and enjoying them. And then others that are effectively taking up space that is quite a bit of a challenge for other retailers within the area.
Well, I mean, the patio use targets a very specific business, either a food business or as in Silver Valley Brewing. But we have quite a few retail shops there. And while we might not think 5 or 4 parking spots are important, if you understand the mindset of how people shop, when they're going into a gift shop, they're not going in there to spend 2 hours. They're going in to pick up what they want. And we're by the current situation, we're actually hurting other businesses. And that's a concern for me. I get where we are. I get where we need to go. But the other piece that we haven't talked about is, what does the overall look of 224th, a revitalized 224th, look like? Because we've talked about this in the past of how do we revitalize that downtown core? Yes, we've talked about shutting down the street for specific days, maybe a Saturday or what have you. We've talked about using parking, allowing for more parking underground. But while I like where we are with this, I'm wondering how this ties into that whole revitalized picture from Dudney up to Lougheed. How does this feed into a revitalized downtown core? And I don't want to make the temporary use permits were given because of COVID. I wouldn't say it was a knee-jerk reaction. It was a reaction that was necessary at the time.
Agreed.
I want to make sure that moving forward, that we're not just trying to jump to an end conclusion without taking into consideration the greater picture. So I support this. But I am worried that if you go to some of these owners and say, remove it by November 10th, it's going to hurt them as much as it's going to hurt the retail shops. So I want to make sure that we've explored all of our options. There's a need for this, absolutely. But have we explored other parking potential for those retail businesses that actually need that? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, to your point on parking and the parking potentials, we did do a campaign last year with those retailers that had noted to us they were having some issues, to do a program where their clients could park underground in the underground parkade here in the Maple Ridge Business Center. And we would reimburse them over the holiday period at the end of that, do a reconciliation to be able to support them. At the end, there were 0 reconciliations that were provided back to us, and there was no uptake. We also ended up doing a mapping and promotion of free parking in the downtown and where that can be accessed. And that had no material impact for those retailers on 224th in the downtown that we were asking and working with. So that's a part of the challenge here. One of the things that we have tried to focus on for this year and encouraged all of those along the downtown especially, but those that could potentially be impacted by a decision on patios, to also be a part of Illuminate Maple Ridge, which is about activation and grants into businesses to activate storefronts, get some more notoriety and activity in the downtown, and be able to really capture more and maybe different audiences than what they normally would have, and create interest and generate more activity, more economic activity in the downtown as well over the holiday season. So certainly take your point on that one and think that there's some opportunities for us to continue to move forward and be creative.
I do understand the attempt. I'll just say this last thing and I'll pass it back to more around 2. I do see the intent of here's a ticket that you can get refunded. But they got to get into the shop first. And if they're driving by and there's nowhere for them to park, they have no idea that there's other availability. So I don't know that if we really did, I'm not questioning the work we've done, but I'm not sure that that was the right approach that we could have taken. Because again, people just driving by, it's a last minute thing. Oh, I want to get shopping done. Can I get into the retail shop? No, there's no parking. I'm going to keep going and I'll go to another shop. So I have a challenge with this, Forrest.
Thank you. And maybe if I could just pick up on one of those components was about just road network planning in the town center. So 224 specifically. And I just take an opportunity to remind council. And so on the heels of the STP endorsement, one of the next projects for transportation staff is a review of the town center road network. And so as part of that, we can explore those discussions about what the impacts would be for those potential shutdowns for, say, a Saturday for to support our farmers market on 224th Street. We can look at some of those parking opportunities within the town center and really what the right laning configuration and travel directions are. We have a number of one-ways we should explore and make sure they're operating efficiently. So that work is coming. It'll be the next set of work that our transportation team takes on, likely looking to get an RFP out towards the end of this year and then the work starting in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll do follow up. I think I've spent up on my time. So Councillor Youssef, followed by Councillor Duick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And touching on that very last point that Mr. Smith spoke to and kind of zooming out of the minutia a bit, when we're looking at the downtown core and the Lougheed corridor, as well as the downtown area plan, and as Mr. Smith, now we're looking at those one-way streets, whether they are efficient or not for us. Is there any consideration, and I realize this may raise a little bit of a stink, metering our parking in the downtown area? I've spoken to this since 2018 because I see it as not only a revenue source for the city that can be utilized to provide public amenities, downtown core improvements, working with the BIA, decorations, festivals, etc. I mean, the revenue source is certainly there. Not only would it be positive to have the city diversify its revenue sources, but also it lends to better and more efficient use of those parking spots. As you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, that example of driving by and not seeing an empty spot. Well, in this case, and if we do implement the parking metering, I would rather not see an empty spot because that's revenue that we're losing out on. Whereas if we have efficient use of those parking meters, and as studies have shown, when a person's parking is metered, they tend to plan their visit to the shops a little better. They tend to utilize the parking spot only for the time that is needed. They're no longer going to leisurely leave their vehicle because they know they have up to 2 hours. Rather, if there is a meter and there is, and of course, that's a whole other issue, is capping it at 2 hours, where we've heard complaints, or 1 hour, depending on where you are in the downtown core. We've heard complaints from hair salons and other places where individuals tend to spend a bit more time. Being able to meter that would not only allow us to take away the 1 or 2 hour limit, but then to be able to get the revenues from people who would like to stay longer at a particular shop or a business. So just putting that plug out there, and was really interested in hearing if engineering or economic development would have thoughts on metering in our downtown core. Thank you.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
And so I can address from an engineering standpoint. So paid parking is one of the tools that you can use to regulate and ensure parking availability upon block faces. There's other tools available to us as well, such as time derated parking along the block. And currently within the downtown core, we're able to successfully use the time limits for parking with the parking bylaw enforcement to go along with that to ensure that we have up to say 80% or say 20% availability or 80% block face full. If at some point in future, from an engineering standpoint, we get to where we're at saturated blocks and we don't have parking availability, even with those time limits in place, that would be the next discussion for us, is to consider paid parking. I'm not suggesting we're at that point yet as a municipality, and especially within the town center, but it is a tool available to us. Now, there's other reasons to go to paid parking, which are outside of the engineering realm. And I don't know if Tyler would like to comment on any of those at this point, or if we're able to. Thank you.
Through you, Mr.
You're
Chair,
in
I'll take a
headlight.
shot at it. So I have seen in other areas that I've represented in communities where there is paid parking that's put in, especially for those areas that you want to see an increased tempo of folks that are going to have a quick shop and then move on to somewhere else. That can create some challenges. Oftentimes you will want to have a majority of those business owners within that particular area to agree to bring something like that in, rather than a city decide, or it was a specialized municipality at the time that we were looking at those types of things. So there can be some inherent challenges on that when it comes down to, once again, engagement on these pieces too.
Thank you, Mr. Smith and Mr. Westover, for those clarifications and educational portion of it as to what's out there. From myself, I'm looking at it as currently we have revenues that are coming in from bylaw enforcement of the parking versus being able to access a significantly higher level of revenue. However, with the considerations and the challenges that are presented, I leave it to staff, and just wanted to plant that bug. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Those are my comments.
Councillor Duick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly lots of feedback on this one. I guess I keep coming back to this, the original intent of this, which was temporary. That temporary is turned into almost, well, 3 years for sure, 3 seasons. So, you know, again, I know it's challenging because you're going to have both, whether it's retail or food and beverage is benefiting from it, but retail shops are not benefiting from it. So this is our challenge. And I know I say this again, Mr. Westover, like I'm thankful that you finally have addressed this because this has been a topic of conversation at the BIA and chamber for the last couple of years. So it's like, when are we getting the report? When are we getting the report? When are we getting the report? So the report is here. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean everybody's going to be happy, but we have to start somewhere. And the temporary piece needs to be not temporary, and we need to move forward. And how can we do it respecting? And I love your piece about protecting the needs of all businesses. And most importantly, the very people that come and support those businesses. Because to your point, Mr. Mayor, if people drive by and they don't know that they can park down underground to go to that business, they're going to just drive by. Unfortunately, that's a big part of how people shop nowadays. If the spot's there, I'll stop and I'll support those businesses. If it's not, I'll just carry on and go to the next place. So I know it's not easy, but I think we need to move on and we need to look at how can we make this beneficial for everyone. And I'm not opposed to looking at things like what does it look like closing 224th on certain days, but we do need to have all the businesses involved in those conversations. And most definitely before we even look at paid parking, that's a chamber and BIA discussion for sure. And ultimately our residents, because I can actually see some downfalls of paid parking, even though this report isn't about that. And what's going to happen is if you have paid parking, people are going to be moving their cars. And so start, stop and moving along and doing their shopping that way versus parking and maybe covering a couple of blocks and coming back to their car. So it's not perfect, but I do appreciate your report and I will support it, recognizing there's going to be some people that are unhappy. There's going to be people that are happy. It's one of those, welcome to politics. But what about a shared space on one of the outdoor or the road pieces? Is there ability for some businesses to come together and share a space? Because you're right, there's a couple of them where I never see anybody sitting. And there's one in particular, it's usually full.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is nothing speaking to shared space within the actual guidelines themselves. So do read that as something that we would consider. I think that it's more so for those drinking establishments or those that may have alcohol on them, that they have some additional work to be done through LCRB or others
Right.
that we want to be mindful of. But if companies would like to look at shared patios and very much that community aspect, hey, go grab a taco from, or go grab a meal from, or an ice cream from, then and they're inviting it on, then that is, everything that we want to see from folks is making sure that we're building community with the business owners as well as with the community and residents broadly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doze.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to re-echo what Councillor Duix did say, because those were the lines I was going to elaborate on, that there's never a time we are going to be satisfying each and every individual that is involved in this. But the most important thing I want to really point out is the fact that it seems obvious to me from the conversation around the table now that it doesn't look like broader consultation was done before this particular report was presented to us. And I would like to say that I would prefer that should be done. Not to say that it's going to actually change anything by way of not having these nearly permanent structures we have on the street now made temporary, as the report has pointed. Because for me, making it temporary will be even more beneficial for those who use it, because if you are not going to use it in the middle of winter, you remove them and put them away. And of course, when you put them away, you provide available spots for people who would like to park and do their shopping around there. So generally speaking, I think that consultation with stakeholders in this kind of situation is very, very important, and I'm not going to take that away. But as a matter of fact, the fact that the staff was able to come up with this report as far as street patio is concerned, I think it's something that we have to really welcome and support, because like I said, I was blown away by what I saw in Oakville. And I was telling my wife that this is what we must bring to Maple Ridge. And here it comes. And I think let us look at what other cities are doing and see the benefits therefrom. Is there going to be one or two individuals that will not benefit? Yes. Is it going to hurt somebody? Yes. But is someone going to benefit? Yes. Is it in the overall interest of the entire citizens of Maple Ridge? My answer will be yes, because we are moving in the right trajectory. For this, my Lord, sorry, Your Worship, I want to say that I still support this the report that will move forward with this proposal, because it is in the best interest of Maple Ridge as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mayor. And, you know, as I listen to this, I hear that I hear there are a few things that I think that we're balancing here. We're balancing the temporary nature of the patios. We're also balancing a few different things. Thank you to Councillor Youssef on the point of needed parking. I think that's something that we can look into in the future as we look at different items. But just going back to the current proposal at hand, I'm just to Councillor Dozier's point, I'm actually quite concerned about what I see to be inadequate business consultation. I'll be very honest. I'm very, I don't look forward to the many calls I think we are all going to receive. And I think I think what, you know, as I saw step back and to the mayor's point, looking at a larger picture here of what we want our downtown to look like. And also one thing we've said is what we've valued which is good governance. And as we heard at the AgDev Summit, respectful communication, and that has come up time and time again. And I've heard of stories of folks calling businesses on 224 last night and said, "Did you hear about this?" And the businesses said no. So I think that is very concerning. And I really respect the work that's been done to this day, but I think that before we move forward with large proposals like these, I want to make sure we really have fleshed out adequate communication. So I will be moving a referral motion because I don't think that we are quite in a point where we are ready to have this acted. And just say folks, I think there are often times where I think we as a city balance to sort of move quicker on things so that we can get that impact faster and really move, because we know we need to move Maple Ridge to the place where it needs to be. But sometimes if we move too fast, we break things. And I am very concerned about our relationship with those business, those who have really stepped up during COVID. And certainly to Councillor Dewick's point, that was intended to be temporary. And I'm very interested in what it looks like to have a permanent program that is respectful of all the parameters. And I don't think necessarily that moving something now that requires people to take down patios within 2.5 weeks with 1 weekend's worth of notice is indicative of good governance or respectful communication. So I will be moving referral motion. And I think before I do that, I just want to bring up a few points that I've heard. I think there are specific patios that are of concern. Is my understanding of what's motivating the larger conversation. And I think I wanted to say that I think there are interesting things that we can do here, sort of as requiring annual permits or requiring folks checking.
So it tells you that I'm not dead yet, right?
Joseph, sorry, Joseph. Dothe, can you please mute yourself? Thank you. Go ahead.
To continue my point, I think I want to say here that I think it sounds like there's specific patios motivating this discussion. I'm not necessarily sure whether a broad-based policy in order to deal with specific patios unless it's necessarily the best policy mechanism to deal with this. And I think my understanding is on a larger basis, there is quite a bit of interest in patios from the community. It started off temporary. And unfortunately, I came down with COVID about 2-3 weeks ago. And unfortunately, we're also getting COVID shots. So it is a difficult place to be where it looks like we may still be needing to socially distance. And so just the intent was temporary and the need seems to have become now longer term than we expected it to be. So also respecting that point. And so, I think also just to Mayor's point about different cafe designs, sidewalk cafes, sidewalks are small. And when it rains, we all want to be on the side of the sidewalk with the awnings, which is also where the tables and chairs are going to be. So I respect that. Just sort of looking ahead, I expect a bunch of phone calls about that too. We move forward to sidewalk cafes, because there is a lot of need for that sidewalk space. And, So I just want to be very careful of the idea that sidewalk cafes can replace the patios that we have. And again, just to say that the patios are quite bustling and busy. And I think overall it comes down to me here, like what is the best use of public space? And I don't think that we have adequately answered that question, neither with full public consultation or with what is to be like a much larger question about the downtown vitality of downtown. I really want to sort of stand on the mayor's shoulders here as he talks about how we really need to look at things systematically and not what things on a one-off basis. So I'm very interested in having a full conversation about the economic viability of our downtown, what the benefits it brings from having whether spaces used for parking or spaces used for patios. Because from my very small understanding, when I go down and you see the patios, even during the winter, there are folks who go down there, again, patronizing different businesses. It brings foot traffic as the holiday season comes. Folks who want to huddle up a jacket and bring their dogs and drink their beer and order sushi and then walk over, to Lemongrass or Teas to buy some shopping. I think there's a larger discussion to be had here about what the use of that space is, and what the economic benefits are, and without having consultation businesses and without urban planners or city planners being brought in with more expertise. I think this is a little bit of a premature conversation. So I'm not sure if I know how to do that, Mr. Mayor. How do I move a referral motion?
Well, you just put it on the floor. So once you stop
Prattling on.
talking, then we'll see if somebody seconds that motion.
Wonderful. Okay.
And then we'll have a debate about that.
Okay, so I think I'm sure as I try and find the words here, I think I'm going to move a referral motion, something to the effect of referring this back to staff so that we can have a full and adequate consultation with all affected business owners, particularly the ones, so all along the stretch of 224, particularly the ones with patios, and also to move to have an economic benefit study done on the use of our public space and to look at the intentions of our other peer municipalities around this area and the cost of our competitiveness as a municipality. There was a lot of words, Madam Clerk, but essentially
you would like to refer back to staff.
Yes, please. Probably the most important thing, the full and adequate
Refer
consultation.
back to
Thank
staff.
you, Mayor.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? I will second it only because I think it's always important to have the conversation which is on the table. But I do have a question for Mr. Hartman. Right now we're at workshop. So if we were to move it forward, staff would still take everything we have into consideration and bring it back to us for, we don't need to do first, second, third reading.
No, this is, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and members of council, this is at a workshop. Council does have the ability to approve policies. This is not a bylaw that requires multiple readings. This is a corporate policy. So if, depending on what council's direction is today, staff can begin implementing. If there's referral back, staff will then regroup and bring further information back to another meeting, whether it's through committee of the whole or through workshop, depending on that process. But council does have the ability during workshop to provide direction of staff and to approve resolutions.
So if it's referred back, what would, in your estimation, what would the timing be for it to come back to us? Because it's got to follow a process.
It's hard to say. I think the conversation I'm hearing on the referral motion is around more robust engagement with our business community. So Mr. Westover would be directed to reach out to the chamber and to the Downtown Business Improvement District and create a program or consultation that would suffice to council's direction around what the amount of engagement would look like with respect to the 4 patios that are in question. So probably mid-November, December would be the earliest we'd be able to get that work back by the time the framework was done and the engagements were completed.
So okay, I got it. Okay, Councillor Duick, this is on the referral motion.
So I need to hear from staff because I did not hear that they didn't engage with the business community. I mean, certainly on the timeline piece, but for the last couple of years, all I've heard from the BIA and the chamber is we need to review this. So we did everything. There was lots of engagement. It's really around the short time frame to remove the patios. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, a couple of items that I'll address the question here first. So there has been engagement from economic development over the course of 2022 and public engagement with residents in 2022 that came back in March. That's where you saw some of the responses coming back, the 615 responses. Over the course of 2023, throughout the earlier portions of the year and latter portions of 2022 as well, I did meet with those that are on 224th and have been consistent with open updates and very honest dialogue with any of those that were either in meetings or in one-on-one meetings, phone conversations, or at the BIA or different events, that we would be coming forward with the seasonal patio program recommendation from a staff side, noting that council decision is certainly something that can drive another direction, but consistently that has been the message from my end. I think the comment that I've heard, especially over the last 24 hours, is not seeing the guideline document in front of folks, although going through quite a bit of consultation at a high level. Let's just call it conversation, not consultation. With that business owner, it sounds like they've understood more about it. Still may not feel super happy about it, quite frankly, but at least understand the intent of what we're trying to move forward with. And once again, being reasonable in being respectful as much as possible, and really making sure that we have flexibility in the program to meet a number of the needs that they have and looking to support them as we go into this new program. I did also want to just ask a clarifying question in terms of the motion that's on the floor here as well on the timeframes, Mr. Hartman. If we are to have an economic analysis on our competitiveness and on public spaces, that would extend that time frame if they're both motions that are linked together. So just wanted to know.
Sorry, was there a question in there?
Let's just keep council focused on the referral motion back to on the engagement with respect to the retail components. That's further work that staff are currently undertaking, and that would delay the timeline. But the concern seems to be with council's currently on the floor is with respect to the timelines for further public engagement with the business community.
Thank you.
So, yeah, okay. I'm just going with my experience as the liaison to the BIA, and that some of the businesses, maybe not all, they're aware of this. So I'm a bit, I'm going back and forth on the referral because of that, but also the public spaces. But I can't talk about that now because now we're talking about referral. So I'm not going to support referral. I'm going to support staff's report should referral not pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff to address the November 10th deadline. If a business, for a variety of reasons, is unable to comply with the November 10th, are we going to drop the hammer on them? Are we going to have some understanding and work with them and have that conversation to get them to where we need to without punitive measures?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the approach that I would like to see is working with companies as much as possible so that it's not necessarily a draconian approach. However, that being said, is that we do recognize retailers have been letting us know and been quite vocal with us that this has been 3 years of a temporary program coming in that has consistently hurt them in their holiday season timeframe. So we're going to try to take, as if this is to move forward, and if that November 10 deadline is something that council would like to see moving forward, we're going to certainly try to work with companies, but there needs to be that final timestamp, so to speak, before there are some consequences, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. And for me, that's sufficient that we set the deadline and then we are able to work with them. It's been our approach as the city to work with our businesses rather than against them. And to the second point that was raised, especially and specifically around the deferral, Mr. Chair, if I may, and I apologize, Flory, we have the executive director of the Downtown Business Improvement Association right here, and she can comment to what conversations and or consultation has been done with not only her organization, but also members when it comes to proceeding with the patio removal, so as to address your public consultation and business consultation questions as well.
Hello. Surprise.
Sorry, Flory.
That's why I said.
So this, I know we had said per Tyler, thank you first and foremost, that this started in 2022, but it's actually been since 2021. So I've been with the BIA for 2 years now. My predecessor had comments to the economic development on these curbside patios at that time. What really came about was, again, we're dealing with the two sides here. We respect our businesses and speaking for both those in both areas, hospitality and retail. The conversations, we've had surveys, we've talked to these businesses over the past 3 years. They are aware. We've put in writing positioning
just one
from the
second.
BIA.
Point of order.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelsey. I really appreciate you being here. I just want to understand if this is according to procedure that we're allowed to have members of the public address council at this particular time. Thank you so much for your presence. I really appreciate it. I always hate to cut someone off. I just want to make sure that we are proceeding according to procedure.
Sorry, we're just.
Thank you,
verifying.
Mr. Mayor. Just out of fairness for the process. Thank you so much, Mr. Kelsey.
Chair, as a stakeholder and an executive director
No,
of the
I
downtown
understand.
BIA,
Just let us follow through. We're checking what the rules are saying.
Sorry, Your Worship. Can't find it off the top of my head here, but I believe that it would probably be appropriate just to take a vote and a majority vote to allow the member to speak to the public.
Okay, then we will do that. That a point of order? Point of order. Oh.
Mr. Mayor, workshop has always traditionally been an informal meeting, although we have the ability to formalize resolutions and pass resolutions that should a staff member request a participation from somebody in the audience, that has always been permitted in the past. Having said that, that's past practice, so I'll
Understand.
leave it to however the clerk wants to handle it.
Understand. We do have the original point of order on the table, and I think first step is, do we have? Let's just take a vote. If people want to hear from, I have my own thoughts on this, but in the interest of time, let's just put that one to rest. So can I get a vote as to whether or not our president of the chamber or the BIA can speak? And the answer is yes. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to remember where I left off. And just to clarify, executive director, our president couldn't be here today. So again, the conversation started in 2021 with previous staff from the Economic Development Office. Those concerns were expressed on the current temporary program and the enforcement of it. So that's still an ongoing conversation between the retail side of things and the hospitality side as well. So the conversations have been happening with the chamber and the BIA. The survey was sent out with the chamber when I was there. So we had that feedback. And then also the parking survey that we did earlier this year kind of incorporated that as well, or actually last year. So there have been conversations with, and I do feel that a lot of the conversations, to Ms. Tan's point, was specific. So are we talking one person? Like, I just want to understand that side of things too, so.
thank you very much for that. And again, my apologies for putting you on the spot. And having heard that, Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable in that our downtown businesses and businesses that have been participating in these conversations are aware. And some of them have even, as we've heard, expressed the concerns about these patios not being so temporary. So having now heard this information, I, much like Councillor Duick, will not be supporting deferral, but will rather be supporting the main motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mayor, and I apologize for that, Mr. Kowski. I'm just trying to understand the rules as a newbie here. And thanks to you, Councillor Dewar, for pointing that out. And just being really respectful of the work that previous council has done in terms of public engagement regarding patios. And thank you to work the PIA in terms of feedback. I think what I'm hearing in my specific concern is that it's one thing to comment on an idea in abstract, public engagement around patios is abstract, as opposed to a specific report that comes down that says, these are the design proposals. We need you to remove your patios by November 10th. And these are the specific things you can do. And it's going to go into temporary. I mean, I think that sort of public, writ large public engagement, which previous council was able to do, was incredibly important. And I think what I'm hearing is that in terms of specific feedback on the specific staff report that came out only on Friday over a weekend, I think can be quite a bit challenging. I see Mr. Kowski nodding here. And I'll speak specifically to the fact that my understanding is that one of the businesses was contacted on Monday night, which is last night, with a significant patio, and they had not been aware of the fact that they would need to remove patios by November 10th. So I'd like to say again that I think that public engagement on patios in general has been very, has been very substantial, especially given in pandemic. I think that's something that's very laudable. And I think just around the specific details, as a business owner, if something like the price of if the price of my input material goes up by 3%, that affects my business substantially. Not to mention removing a sidewalk patio in a time when COVID and the flu season is about to resume. And I understand my parents have just gotten their notification to get another COVID shot. I'm very concerned in terms of in terms of the specific consultation that has been done with this specific report. And for me, I understand that has not been sufficient, particularly given that businesses who have substantial patio operations have not been consulted and spoken to about this particular report. So it is a very significant change. And I think that we need, again, to step very carefully around messing with other people's businesses when we just had an economic development summit that told us that communication is paramount and that communication has been very difficult with the city. Let's just be honest. Businesses have told us that communication with the city has been difficult. And now we are coming down the report that came out on Friday, and over the weekend, we expect people to comment or respond substantially. I think I really respect the work of staff being able to move this forward. I think the timeline, if, my family, is a business owner, and I think that we would be very challenged and really quite dismayed and distressed by this kind of timeline, and I really appreciate that we need to move fast sometimes. And I think that we also need to look across 224, respecting the holisticness of all the businesses that arrive from this neighborhood. And also noting that this is a big change, asking people to tear down structures that they've built up, which if they're safety compliant, it's a very difficult conversation. So I would like, again, to respectfully note again the referral motion on the table, that we refer this back to staff in order that we have adequate consultation on this specific report. So I will leave it there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Seeing there's no one else, I will just throw in my 2 cents. And again, the question, and I've asked this before, those folks who own those patios, have they been spoken to? Yes or no?
It's me directly to you, Mr. Chair. So for this specific report here, not all, no.
No, in the sense that they may have to remove their patios by November 10th. Do they know this? Are they aware of this?
Not at this point without having the council motion to move forward to you, Mr. Chair, with the time frame there.
It's tough, even for me. I always come in with an open mind, and I've been going back and forth on this one. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I will note that a number of the businesses on 224th that would be impacted from this motion here have been engaged over the year to note that there would be a seasonal patio program that would come in likely in October. They were aware of the report.
About that.
They were aware of the report that was here on April 11th.
Okay.
And the intent to come back before the end of the month here with a seasonal patio, modernized curbside seasonal patio program.
Okay, all right. I don't have any other questions. Any further questions on the referral? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the referral? And I don't know what color that is, Doze. Is that green? So can you unmute yourself? And I just would like to actually hear, are you supporting the referral or against?
Yes, I'm supporting the referral because these people have to be consulted. Yes.
Oh, joy. So we're sitting at a 2-on-2. I haven't voted yet, so I'm the tiebreaker. Hey. I'm going to go back to a comment that Councillor Youssef made about no, I don't have an issue with the seasonal. Let's just be clear with that. I don't have an issue with the seasonal. Where I have an issue is the November 10th. That it may not work for everybody for lots of reasons. And that's where my issue comes, is it's a short-term time to get to that point because we're 2 weeks away roughly, right? So if I remember correctly, your response is there'll be flexibility in this one, in that date. So if they can't get it removed for whatever reason, we're not going to bring the hammer down. That is correct?
To you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, correct.
I think it's important that we try to move forward on this, especially because we're entering into a very traditionally seasonal business for some of our businesses. And I'll say that having worked in the restaurant industry and in the malls, you don't make money the entire year, you make it all up around Christmas time. I'm mindful of that and I don't want to hurt those businesses. I take your point that this seasonal conversation has been ongoing for a year, and I take that and I accept that. So at this point, I want to be able to move forward. And I still want to add a couple of more points, but on the issue of referral, I'm going to vote against the referral. So motion for referral has been defeated. Okay, so now we're back to the main motion. And I do want to have a question here because even with the way that it's laid off, the way that the whole thing's laid out, come next year, how are we avoiding where we got to here in the same place by not having parking? So if everybody comes right back out and say, yeah, we're going to put a new patio out there and suck up all the parking spots, how does that bring any comfort to the retailers that are there? This is the problem for me because I like where we're going, but I don't want to end up in the same place because we may not have certain restrictions in place. So maybe you can help by speaking to that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the intent here would be to have the seasonal patio program, curbside patio program clear for those that do partake with the patios. So once again, starting in April 1, October 31, that's the end of the season, November 1, these come out. So there should hit a point where it is well known, very similar to what it should be known with the highway use permits, that those patios should be removable within a 24-hour period. That is a clause that's within them. We can certainly have some engagements and additional engagements with companies. I'm very much hearing that, and that is something that we will focus on as we move ahead and with our partners with the Chamber and the BIA to make it abundantly clear to folks that these are to come out during those holiday shopping times, especially and over the winter period when parking seems to be more of a challenge for our retailers and parking seems to be more of a challenge for our community in close proximity to where they would like to shop. Once again, it is still very much open to our business owners if they would like to do a year-round sidewalk patio that is near their, adjacent to their business or some of the openings to their businesses where they could have chairs or tables where people can consume. That's certainly an option. Councillor Tan, I certainly take your point though too, is that we need to make sure that all of those areas where this would be approved are still going to be very useful and worthwhile for that 2-meter separation that just allows that ease of access for pedestrians and or those that are also using the public right of way. So hopefully that helps, Mr. Mayor, on showcasing that there's still there's clarity here on when those curbside patios would be in force, or those seasonal curbside patios would be in force, in use, lively, and when they need to close up for the season.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions on the main motion? We're not taking questions from the audience at this point. Seeing as how there's no further comments or questions at this time, I will call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Councillor Dode? I see white. Is that green? Okay, so
Sorry, it is, I'm green.
Okay, so motion has been carried. Thank you very much. It's a hard conversation to have. I don't think we have all the answers yet. There's still some work to be done. And I really would like to see how this all ties in to a bigger 224th plan, right? So that everybody, all businesses can be successful on that road. Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item is item 5.5, Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, Maple Ridge Climate Related Multi-Hazard Risk Assessment, and staff are in attendance to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'll give you a brief overview of our proposed project to the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, a bit of a sense of what the fund entails, and then what exactly we're asking for today through the council report. So the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund is a suite of programs and funding available to local governments. There's actually 9 separate streams. Really, it's intended to provide funding for local governments to undertake emergency planning and resilience planning initiatives, particularly focused about climate risks. Council may recall that earlier this year, we came forward with an extreme temperature risk mapping request. The city was successful in that funding request, and we're actually trying to build off of it with our current disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation.
Sorry, point of, oh, what happened? Okay, we'll have to pause. That's okay. I saw Yusuf leave. I didn't see Councillor Dode drop off. Do we have to recess? Just sit and wait?
Oh, there he is.
Oh, Councillor Dode, you're back. Thank you.
I didn't drop off. I just didn't want you to see me, trying to put something in my mouth.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Olivieri.
So as I was saying, we're building off the original successful application to pursue what is called a multi-hazard climate hazard risk assessment. So what we're actually talking about is some very innovative work that is looking at all of the climate hazards and risks that that are currently posed in our community, and looking at how all of those risks actually relate to each other to enable the development of an adaptation plan and strategies. This is all linked to the city's development of a low carbon resilience climate action plan, excuse me. So this is actually feeding into the development of that plan and identification of the high priority items for implementation once that plan has been developed. This proposed project was actually brought forward to the Mayor's Task Force on Climate Action for discussion. And so we actually received some feedback from one of the members of the task force, Ms. Allison Shaw, who's also member and lead of the SFU ACT team, who leads climate action work and works with communities in undertaking these initiatives. So what we're asking specifically from UBCM is for $150,000 to conduct the project. Our resolution does ask that we provide information that we are going to, or commitment to manage the grant and the project. We're expecting an announcement in late 2023 on this particular project, but there's an additional opportunity to apply for funding in 2024. And so staff are evaluating opportunities to leverage that future funding envelope as well. Really, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to, with the recommendation in here, right? Yes, there it is. Can I get a motion to move this, please? Moved by Councillor Tan, seconded by Councillor Youssef. Comments, questions? Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to need to make my name sound a little bigger for you. Thank you for the report and the work that's gone into it. Just a real quick question. When we're talking about climate-related multi-hazard risk assessment, are we specifically addressing certain issues that we have here in our municipality that go above and beyond what is traditionally considered to be an environmental hazard? As the mayor himself has spoken to this point a few times, as many of us around the table, the Silver Valley Island that it becomes when there is flooding. Will this funding be flexible enough, or is there enough flexibility for us to be able to utilize some of this funding towards, for example, establishing a way out, if you will, a safe exit, or is it simply to do with developing the strategy?
Thank you,
Chair, of course.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair to Councillor Youssef. The purpose of this funding is to develop the plan, to better understand, to conduct the risk assessment, to understand globally what are the risks and how do they relate to each other. It's not, it's the first phase. The future funding can actually be leveraged to build out the plan. So this is kind of that initial assessment phase.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is my question.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Motion has been carried. Thank you very much. I think we come down to the end. We have no
Yes.
further business.
Correct.
Okay. Before I adjourn, I just want to remind we have to be back here for 2:00. So there is lunch upstairs. So enjoy and let's come back for 2:00. Thank you all very much. Tough conversation, but that's the way it works. Thank you.